My twin sister and I finished school at the same time, but our parents only threw a party for her, because I didn't choose the right path. They told me, "We're not going to honor a useless artist." So I left. 5 years later, they watched me on national TV. Hey Reddit, I'm Ava, 27. If you ask my parents about me, they'll say I'm the daughter who let them down. Not because I was wild or irresponsible. Not because I failed or got into trouble. Just because I decided to become an artist. My twin sister Emily and I were born only 5 minutes apart. Growing up, people often thought we were identical, with the same long hair, soft freckles, and sharp chins. Yet, while we looked alike on the outside, we were very different on the inside. Emily was naturally good with numbers and craved order. She loved spreadsheets at just 9 years old. I, on the other hand, would lose myself in sketchbooks for hours, even when I should have been doing homework. Our personalities were like water and fire. I was messy, emotional, and a dreamer, while she was organized, logical, and a planner. In our household, dreaming wasn't encouraged. Our parents, Thomas and Valerie, were engineers who believed in hard data, hard work, and making money. They had one rule: success must be measurable. This meant titles, degrees, promotions, and ideally a six-figure salary by age 30. Anything outside that plan was seen as failure. So, when Emily decided to major in economics with a minor in data science, my parents proudly displayed her acceptance letter on the fridge. When I got into a well-respected art program for animation and visual storytelling, they didn't even mention it at dinner. I should have seen it coming, but a part of me hoped they would eventually appreciate what I loved. After all, I wasn't just doing finger paintings. I was creating narrative worlds, designing characters, and crafting meaning. But to them, it was all the same. A waste of tuition. Years went by, and Emily excelled in her classes, landed internships at investment firms, and graduated with honors. I worked myself to the bone creating a senior thesis film that received 2 festival awards and an invitation to present at an industry showcase. But my GPA wasn't perfect, and I didn't have a corporate job offer. So, to my parents, I was falling behind. Then came graduation day. We both walked across the same stage in matching black gowns, our caps bouncing as we smiled. Emily's name was called first, and the crowd applauded. Mine was called a few minutes later, and they clapped again. That was one of the last moments I felt equal to her. A week later, I learned through a group text that my parents were throwing a graduation party for Emily. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I called my mom, and she answered with irritation. "You don't need a party, Ava," she said flatly. "Emily's the one with the real job." I blinked, holding the phone in silence. "I graduated too, remember?" I finally said. She sighed. "We're not going to celebrate someone who chose crayons over a career." That sentence stung, and it only got worse. Dad chimed in later when I tried to talk to him. He scoffed. "We don't want to congratulate a pathetic artist. What do you want?" A round of applause for unemployment. That moment shattered something inside me. I didn't scream or cry, I just stopped. I stopped trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided it didn't exist. On the day of the party, I didn't go. I packed my things and left. I didn't make a scene, no fights, no dramatic exits. I simply left a note on the kitchen counter and took a bus from our suburb in Maryland to New York City with a duffel bag, my art portfolio, and $500 in my account. For the next 5 years, I built a life from scratch. New York wasn't easy. I crashed on a friend of a friend's futon in Brooklyn. I juggled 2 jobs, barista in the mornings and studio assistant at a small animation collective in the evenings. The pay was terrible, the hours long. I ate rice and lentils most nights, and my winter coat was secondhand and missing a zipper. But I kept pushing forward. I kept drawing, pitching, and creating. I submitted designs to contests, animated shorts for indie musicians, and freelanced for children's books. One project led to another. I lived off ramen and dreams, but my work improved. My storytelling evolved, and I learned to convey painful truths through movement and color. Eventually, I caught a break. A producer at a mid-sized studio saw my short film on Instagram. He messaged me, asking if I had more. I sent him my entire portfolio and a pitch deck I had been secretly working on in Google Slides at 2 a.m. every night. 2 months later, I was hired as a junior concept artist. That position led to another and then another. I worked on background designs for a series that was picked up by a streaming platform. I didn't receive credit at first, but I didn't mind. I was in the room doing the work. Then came my biggest opportunity yet. At 26, I was offered the chance to develop my own miniseries, a 6-episode animated show inspired by my own life. It was raw, intimate, and deeply emotional. The main character was a misunderstood girl with a vivid imagination and cold, judgmental parents. It wasn't subtle, but it was real. The show got picked up, not by a niche platform, but by a major network. I spent the next 10 months working tirelessly with a team of animators, writers, and voice actors who believed in the story. I was the executive producer, creative director, and lead designer. My name was on every episode. When it premiered, I was 27. I didn't even tell my parents. They found out by accident. On the day the show aired, I was participating in a panel on a live morning TV segment that was streamed nationwide. I wore a soft blue blazer and curled my hair. I looked directly into the camera and told the hosts that art had saved me, that sometimes the family you come from doesn't recognize your value until the world forces them to see it. Back in Maryland, my parents were having brunch with family friends. The TV was on in the background, and suddenly there I was, their daughter, the pathetic artist, on TV. I wasn't watching when it happened, but my cousin Lena texted me that afternoon. "Girl, your mom just turned ghost white. Your face popped up on the TV, and Aunt Valerie literally spilled her mimosa." I just stared at my phone, my hands going cold. I hadn't thought about them in months. I had buried that pain beneath a mountain of work, deadlines, sketches, and contracts. But now they knew. It didn't take long for the texts to start. At first, they were simple. "Ava, we saw you on TV. Are you okay?" Mom texted. "Proud of your success. Hope we can talk soon." Dad sent a message with no apologies or acknowledgement of what they had done, no recognition of the years they dismissed me like I was nothing. Just shallow curiosity now that the spotlight was on me. I didn't reply, but the messages kept coming. "Your grandmother saw your show. She cried. She's proud of you. Do you think we could visit the studio sometime? Emily would love to catch up. She's been watching your show too." And then the kicker. "We always believed in you, Ava. We were just worried about your future." I almost laughed at that. Worried about my future? They weren't worried, they were ashamed. Ashamed that I hadn't turned into another clone of them. Ashamed that I dared to dream differently. The show started gaining momentum. Viewers connected with its authenticity. Critics praised the visuals and emotional depth. People began recognizing me at events and on the street, even at coffee shops. I got invited to do panels, workshops, and podcasts. Suddenly, I wasn't the girl with the wrong degree. I was a rising voice in animated storytelling, and my parents were scrambling to rewrite history. About a month later, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something inside me, maybe a bit of masochism, made me pick up. "Ava, hi, it's Mom." There was an awkward pause. "We were wondering, we saw the show's been nominated for an award. The animation award, that big one, the red carpet thing." I stayed silent. "We just wanted to say how proud we are." "Really? You always knew I'd make it." That phrase made something inside me snap. I took a deep breath. "You didn't even give me a plate of food at Emily's party." She went quiet. I continued. "You told me I wasn't worth celebrating. You called me pathetic. And now that other people see my value, suddenly you do too. Ava, you're being unfair." "No," I said. "I'm finally being fair. 4 or 5 years, I've built a life without you, and now you want to be part of it because it looks good." More silence. "You were embarrassed of me. Now you want to be in the pictures, but you weren't there when I had nothing. You weren't there when I cried myself to sleep after getting rejected by 10 clients in a week. You weren't there when I had to choose between a Metro card and dinner." She finally spoke. "We made a mistake." "Yeah," I replied. "You did." And I hung up. Emily reached out a week later. She actually emailed me, preferring a formal approach. The subject line read "Congratulations," and the message included an apology. She admitted she had always known how unfair it was, that she didn't know how to speak up back then, and that it was easier to stay quiet and enjoy the spotlight. But she also said something surprising. She wrote, "I watched your entire show and the episode about the sister who stood by and did nothing. That one broke me. I saw myself in her, and I hated it. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say." For the first time, it felt honest. No flattery, no manipulation, just truth. I replied simply, "Thank you for finally seeing me." A few months later, I won the award. It was the biggest night of my career so far. I wore a red silk gown, curled my hair into a side-swept wave, and walked the carpet with my head held high. When they announced my name, I stood up slowly, and the applause was deafening. I held the trophy like it was made of gold, because to me, it was worth even more than that. During my speech, I said, "This story is for every girl who was told her dreams were ridiculous. For every artist who was laughed at by people who only valued numbers. You're not pathetic. You're powerful." The room erupted. People stood and clapped, some cried. And back home, in that perfectly neat house in Maryland, I imagined my parents watching and finally understanding. A month after the awards, I returned to Maryland for the first time in years. Not to see my parents, but to visit my grandmother, who had fallen ill. She was one of the few people who had secretly sent me art supplies when I moved to New York. She had always whispered, "You're meant for something beautiful." When I entered her room, she smiled weakly and squeezed my hand. "I always knew you'd paint the world," she said. She passed away 3 days later. At the funeral, my parents were there. My mom looked like she had aged 5 years. My dad kept glancing at me as if I might disappear. They didn't say much, and neither did I, but as I was leaving, my mother whispered, "We really are proud of you, even if we don't deserve to be." I paused. "You don't," I said, "but I hope one day you learn how to be." Then I walked away. Now I live in a brownstone in Brooklyn with my rescue dog, Nico. I have a second animated series in development, and a book deal is on the horizon. My art is displayed in galleries, and I teach workshops for girls in underserved communities who want to tell their stories. I still draw every day, but I no longer draw for approval. I create because it's who I am. And the next time someone asks me about my family, I just smile and say, "My real family?